Dr. Saad is a big deal, to put it bluntly. Over 1 million followers on Twitter, now X, and Elon Musk is one of his biggest fans. And it's not hard to see why. He calls out nonsense and is warning that what he saw as a Jewish child in Lebanon is a lot closer to our home than we might think. He's a visiting professor and global ambassador at Northwood University, a famed author, and I'm so pleased to say he joins me now. Dr. Gard, so good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on, Erin. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. I'd imagine it would be a little bit tough being in that position.
Right. Well, contrary to what people think, Lebanon was not this utopia of progressive tolerance. I mean, you're tolerated until you're not, right? And then you better run real fast. So I tell many stories of how difficult it was to be Jewish in Lebanon, even before the Civil War in 1975. So, for example, when I was 5, the Egyptian president Gamal Abdel Nasser had passed away, and he was a revered guy in the Arab world. Well, when he passed away, all the people would go on the streets, and the first thing that they would sing or chant or shout was "Death to Jews, death to Jews." So, as a 5-year-old boy, I was looking at my mother and saying, "Well, why are they screaming death to Jews? What do we have to do with this?" So that was one example. I'll give you maybe one or two others. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, the teacher asked us to stand up and say what we were going to be when we grow up. And I want to be a policeman. I want to be a soccer player. I want to be a doctor. And so one of my friends who knew that I was Jewish stood up and said, when I grow up, I want to be a Jew killer, to raucous laughter and applause. And so this is the kind of life you lived in Lebanon as a Jewish boy.
So you're giving examples of what it was like for you in Lebanon as a Jew from decades and decades ago. But so much of that mentality sounds very familiar. In fact, it's starting to rear its ugly head now in 2024 and has been since October 7.
Indeed. Look, if you allow millions of immigrants to come into host nations that are generous by virtue of the fact that they're letting these people in, and those people come from cultures where you have 95 to 99% of polled people exhibiting endemic Jew hatred towards the Jews, it doesn't take a fancy professor to tell you what's going to happen to Jew hatred in the host societies. And so that's exactly what I had been warning about in Canada. And that's exactly what we now see in every corner of every street.
What really frustrates me about the pro-Hamas, and they say pro-Palestinian, they're not, they're pro-Hamas types waving flags and cheering on terrorists, is that they propose to be the humane ones. So they'd say to someone like me who stands against terror alongside the only country who's fighting it right now, that I don't care about children in the Middle East, which is utterly ridiculous. The only reason I stand against terror is because I care desperately about all children in the Middle East, and I want the people killing them, the terrorists, to be eliminated.
It's a bit of false rhetoric, but it actually trampolines into my next book, which is titled Suicidal Empathy, right? So empathy is a wonderful and laudable virtue to possess, as long as it is directed towards the right targets in right measure. So it's not that empathy is bad no matter what, but if I care more about Central American illegal migrants than I care about American vets who've lost their limbs protecting the United States, then I'm engaging in suicidal empathy. So I think the example that you just discussed is exactly that.
Oh, that will absolutely be a bestseller. I've got no doubt at all. It's a similar situation. My dad was a politician here in Australia, a former Major General, and he was an architect of what they called Operation Sovereign Borders, which essentially stopped people smugglers bringing people here illegally by boat, and they were all drowning at sea. And people said, that's so cruel. Let everyone in. That's so mean. And it's like, no, we're actually saving people's lives. We're stopping children drowning at sea. I want to ask you about Donald Trump. Now, you took to X and you said that you might now have to hide under a desk in fear. Explain that to me and tell me, you don't appear to be under a desk right now, so clearly you're feeling a little bit safer.
Well, I will. Be patient. That clip will show up at some point soon. But no, I'm, of course, elated that he won, to the dismay of nearly 100% of my academic colleagues, all of whom are saying that women will now no longer have any access to health care, trans people will be executed, Jews will be in internment camps. It really is a level of orgiastic, unhinged irrationality that is an affront to human reason. But here I stand and here I persist.
And the exact same people who are saying that he hates women and that women aren't safe in America now are the ones who sided with Hamas after October 7, who denied the rape of Jewish women, who marched in the streets flying the flags of the terrorists who killed people, innocent women, innocent children. It is unbelievable. Now, I mentioned Elon Musk at the start of our interview. I'd love to get your thoughts on him. I know he's a big fan of yours. I'm assuming you are of him as well, and what kind of role you see him playing in a Trump administration.
Well, he's already done quite a bit. I don't think that Donald Trump would have been elected were it not for, number one, Elon Musk buying Twitter, now called X, and then putting his influence into the final stretch. But I think that it looks like if he does try to remove some of the excess fat that occurs with any institution, and certainly the U.S. government, if he did only that, it would be enough of a service. So I think let's start with there and see where it goes.
Absolutely. Now, just finally, peace in the Middle East. You seem like a very sensible man. In fact, I know you are. Highly educated, reasonable, rational, things that are quite rare these days. How do we achieve it?
We only achieve it when young kids straight out of the womb are not taught that anybody who doesn't share their religion is to be eliminated or converted. It has nothing to do with land. It has nothing to do with any of the things that you hear about. It's got nothing to do with colonialism and Zionism. It has to do with endless orgiastic teaching of hatred of the other. Once that is removed, Golda Meir, who was a prime minister of Israel in the late 60s and up to the mid 70s, said that once the Palestinians love their children more than they hate ours, we will have peace. And that maxim still holds true today.
It really does. Doctor, thank you so very much for speaking with me.